Imagine holding in your hand a small copper coin struck nearly 90 years ago. A coin that passed through the Great Depression. A coin that was used when Franklin D. Roosevelt was president. A coin that saw America rising from hardship into a new era of industry power and resilience. This is the 1936 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a simple 1-cent piece that carries with it layers of history, politics, economics, art, and human stories. Today, we are going to take a long, deep dive into this coin, a professional, detailed history that will carry us through the very reasons why this coin was struck, how it was designed, what its legacy is, and why collectors even now search for it with passion and reverence. The wheat penny had already become a symbol of modern American coinage when the United States Mint introduced it in 1909 to celebrate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1936, it had been circulating for nearly 3 decades, and Americans had grown accustomed to seeing the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the 2 wheat stalks on the reverse. Yet the 1936 issue stands at a turning point in American history. To understand why, we need to journey back to the conditions of the mid-1930s, a time when America was fighting to emerge from the Great Depression. Unemployment was high, farms were struggling, industry was trying to restart, and the New Deal programs were reshaping the landscape of American society. The United States Mint in 1936 was busier than it had been in the early 1930s, during the worst Depression years when coin demand had collapsed as commerce slowed. But by 1936, economic recovery programs had started to restore business activity and coinage needs surged once again. This was the environment in which the 1936 wheat penny was produced at 3 different mints: the main Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint. Each of these facilities played a critical role in making sure coins reached every corner of the nation. And as we examine their production totals, we find fascinating stories. Philadelphia struck over 309 million pieces, Denver produced nearly 41 million, and San Francisco added more than 29 million in the total mintage for 1936, one of the largest of the decadano. The year 1936 is also notable because it was one of the first years when proof coins returned to American numismatics. Proofs are special coins struck with extra care, polished dies, and mirror-like finishes, and they were sold to collectors in limited numbers. After a long pause since 1916, the Mint resumed proof coinage in 1936, and among them was the 1936 proof Lincoln cent. This makes the year even more historic because the proof sets of 1936 are treasured today as the rebirth of modern proof coinage. The proof 1936 wheat penny in particular is one of the most desirable coins a collector can acquire because it represents both artistry and scarcity. The artistry of the wheat penny itself had not changed since its introduction in 1909. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, remained the longest-running portrait in American coinage history, and the reverse, with its simple wheat stalks symbolizing American agriculture, continued to remind citizens of the nation's roots and farming communities. But by 1936, Brenner's design had become more than just art. It was an icon. It symbolized stability in uncertain times. Lincoln's steady gaze reminded Americans of endurance, unity, and sacrifice. The coin was not just money. It was a message carried in every pocket. If we examine the composition of the coin, we see that it was struck in bronze, consisting of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This traditional alloy gave the coin its rich reddish appearance, though circulation would quickly darken its color. Collectors today prize examples that still retain their original red luster. Finding a fully red 1936 penny untouched by time is considered a gem of the hobby and can fetch significant prices in auctions, particularly in the highest mint state grades. The 1936 wheat penny also stands out because it exists in several varieties that intrigue collectors. For example, the 1936 double die obverse is one of the most famous varieties from this year, where extra impressions of the design can be seen on the date and lettering due to a misalignment during the die making process. These double die cents are scarce and highly valuable, commanding prices that can turn a simple 1-cent piece into a treasure worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on condition. This variety adds a layer of mystery and excitement to the 1936 series, because it reminds us that, even with modern machinery, mistakes could still happen, and those mistakes became prizes for future generations. But beyond the technical details of mintages, alloys, designs, and varieties, the 1936 wheat penny represents something larger. It represents the spirit of a nation. Recovering from hard times, people used these pennies to buy bread, newspapers, coffee, and transit fares. Children saved them in piggy banks and coin purses. Mothers counted them carefully for groceries, and fathers held them tightly during tough paydays. Each coin carried the weight of survival dreams and small victories in an America determined to rise once more. In 1936, Jesse Owens was winning Olympic gold in Berlin, defying Nazi ideology. Franklin Roosevelt was running for re-election with his New Deal message, and the Dust Bowl was still ravaging parts of the Midwest. Through it all, the humble wheat penny circulated daily, silently witnessing the struggles and triumphs of ordinary people. Collectors today look back at the 1936 penny not just as a numismatic item, but as a time capsule of that pivotal year. The proof coins show us the artistry and care of the mint. The regular circulation strikes show us the demand for commerce, and the varieties show us the unpredictability of minting technology. Together, they paint a full picture of why this coin is remembered, and why entire books and countless studies have been written about wheat pennies and their enduring place in history. So, when you hold a 1936 Lincoln wheat penny, you are not just holding copper, you are holding the echoes of the Depression, the hopes of recovery, the steady leadership of Lincoln's image, the artistry of Victor David Brenner, and the story of America in transition from hardship to hope, from scarcity to progress, from doubt to determination. That is why this coin deserves more than just a glance. It deserves the kind of deep exploration that numismatists, historians, and collectors have pursued for decades, and why we can spend hours unfolding its story in every detail. In the year 1938, the United States was standing at the crossroads of history. The Great Depression had not fully loosened its grip on the nation, yet there was a feeling of cautious optimism. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was leading the country into a new chapter. Through his New Deal programs, industry was slowly recovering. Americans were beginning to see signs of economic stability. And in this very environment, the humble 1-cent piece, the wheat penny of 1938, was struck at the United States Mint and began its journey into pockets, purses, and cash registers across the nation. When we hold a 1938 wheat penny today, we are not simply looking at a copper coin, we are holding a piece of American history, a relic that tells the story of a nation on the move and a society evolving through hardship, resilience, and progress. The wheat penny series, known officially as the Lincoln cent, had been introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. This marked the first time in American history that a president's portrait appeared on a circulating coin. The coin was designed by Victor David Brenner and instantly became a symbol not just of commerce, but of national identity. The obverse proudly bore the image of Lincoln's profile with the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date of issue, while the reverse displayed two simple yet powerful wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent, United States of America, and E pluribus unum. This wheat reverse design remained on the coin until 1958, and thus every wheat penny minted in those decades became an enduring symbol of American heritage. By 1938, the wheat penny had already been in circulation for nearly 3 decades, but this particular year carries with it a unique significance because it was a year of transition and preparation for America and the world at large. For coin collectors, the 1938 wheat penny holds a fascinating place, not only because of its production, but also because of its relative scarcity compared to other years. It was minted at 3 different facilities: the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint, each producing coins with slight variations that today intrigue collectors and historians. Alakeith Philadelphia Mint produced the largest quantity of 1938 cents. With no mint mark, these were the everyday workhorse coins intended to meet the nation's commercial demand. Meanwhile, the Denver Mint coins bore the D mint mark, and the San Francisco Mint coins bore the S mint mark. What makes the San Francisco mintage especially interesting is that it produced far fewer coins than Philadelphia and Denver, which makes the 1938 S wheat penny more sought after in the world of numismatics. Not because it is impossibly rare, but because relative scarcity always drives collector interest. To understand the 1938 wheat penny, we must also place it against the backdrop of American society. The late 1930s was a period of shifting global tides. The world was edging closer to the outbreak of World War II in Europe, and while the United States had not yet entered the conflict, the tensions overseas influenced American politics, industry, and culture. This was a time when coins like the 1938 wheat penny were used by everyday Americans buying newspapers, bread, and gasoline. Each penny circulated through a society trying to find its footing between economic recovery and looming global uncertainty. Each coin became a silent witness to conversations in barbershops, factory lunchrooms, and family dinner tables. From a metallurgical perspective, the 1938 wheat penny was struck in a composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This traditional bronze alloy had been used since the introduction of the Lincoln cent in 1909 and would remain until the Second World War forced drastic changes in 1943. When the mint produced the famous steel cents. Thus the 1938 penny stands at the threshold of that change, a sturdy copper coin that still reflected traditional methods of minting before war would alter America's coinage fervor. For collectors today, the 1938 wheat penny holds both historical and monetary value. In lower circulated grades, it is often worth only a modest premium over face value, but in higher mint state grades, especially with strong luster and clean surfaces, the coin can command impressive prices. Certified examples with sharp strikes from the San Francisco Mint are particularly prized by advanced collectors, and those in superb gem condition are not just rare, they are considered trophies in the world of small denomination American coins. But the fascination with the 1938 wheat penny goes beyond market value. It is a coin that embodies the resilience of a nation struggling out of economic despair. It is a coin that circulated during a time when families were beginning to hope again, when industries were producing new jobs, when Roosevelt's fireside chats brought comfort to living rooms across the land, and when young men who carried these coins in their pockets would just a few years later carry them off to war across oceans. It is this human story, the connection between copper and history, that makes the 1938 wheat penny so compelling. Design itself is a masterpiece of simplicity. Brenner's portrait of Lincoln has been praised for its dignity and realism. The wheat reverse, though modest in concept, conveys abundance, growth, and the agricultural strength of the nation, symbols that resonated deeply with Americans of the 1930s, when farming communities had been devastated by the Dust Bowl, and yet agriculture remained central to the nation's survival. Every time an American looked at the wheat reverse, they were reminded of the land, the harvest, and the resilience of rural life. Numismatists also note that 1938 pennies show interesting varieties and errors. Coins from this year can display doubled dies, ray-punched mint marks, and other small variations, which add layers of intrigue for collectors. Such coins were accidents of the minting process, but today, they are treasures hidden within the millions of ordinary cents produced. Every error is like a secret waiting to be discovered, and a reminder that even in the most standardized processes, human and mechanical imperfections can create lasting value. The journey of the 1938 wheat penny did not end in the pockets of the people who first used them. Many of these coins continued to circulate well into the 1950s and 1962, and even today, they occasionally appear in pocket change. Though worn and faded, their designs softened by decades of use. Each surviving example continues to connect us with the stories of those who once relied upon them. It is remarkable to consider that a penny that may have been used by a child to buy candy in 1938 could later have been spent by a soldier returning from World War II, or by a family shopping during the booming post-war years. For YouTube Audience exploring the 1938 wheat penny means uncovering not just the facts of mintage or the details of its composition, it means immersing ourselves in a chapter of history where every penny mattered, where the smallest coin carried the weight of national identity, where millions of Americans lived with uncertainty and hope, and where even the humblest cent became a symbol of resilience, progress, and continuity across generations. This is what makes the 1938 wheat penny more than a coin. It makes it a story, and one that deserves to be told in full depth. In the year 1939, America was standing at the crossroads of history. The Great Depression still cast a shadow across the land, yet a sense of resilience filled the hearts of millions, and in the midst of this era, a small copper coin, the 1939 wheat penny, emerged as a silent witness to the struggles, triumphs, and transformations of a nation. This coin was not merely a piece of change used in everyday transactions, it was a reflection of the times, a symbol of industry, perseverance, and the artistry of American minting. To tell the story of the 1939 wheat penny, we must first step back into the broader history of the Lincoln Cent series, which began in 1909 when President Theodore Roosevelt initiated a wave of change in American coinage. Roosevelt believed that coins should be more than mere instruments of commerce. He wanted them to embody the spirit and ideals of the nation, and to accomplish this, he called upon renowned sculptor Victor David Brenner. Brenner's design of Abraham Lincoln became the first American coin to honor a real person, a bold departure from the allegorical figures of liberty that had long adorned U.S. coinage. The obverse side of the coin, with its finely detailed portrait of Lincoln, became an instant classic, representing unity, freedom, and leadership, while the reverse side, featuring two simple wheat stalks flanking the denomination, embodied agricultural strength and productivity. The wheat penny would become a mainstay of American life, circulating in the pockets of soldiers, factory workers, schoolchildren, and businessmen alike. By 1939, the Lincoln wheat cent had already been in production for 3 decades, and it carried with it layers of history. Every strike of the coin presses at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints told a story of craftsmanship, precision, and national pride. The Philadelphia Mint struck the majority of these cents in 1939, with no mint mark, while Denver and San Francisco contributed smaller mintages, each with its distinctive D and S marks. Collectors today study these distinctions closely because the differences in mintages and survival rates directly impact the value and rarity of the coins. To understand the 1939 wheat penny, we must also immerse ourselves in the world of America at that moment. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was serving his second term as president, guiding the nation through a complex recovery effort. The clouds of war were gathering in Europe as Hitler's Germany embarked on a campaign of aggression, and though America was not yet involved, the economy and the national mood were deeply influenced by global uncertainty. Coins minted in this year thus exist not only as instruments of commerce, but as artifacts of a tense yet hopeful age. During 1939, the production of pennies remained high because the coin was essential for everyday transactions. From a loaf of bread to a newspaper, pennies were exchanged millions of times across counters in small towns and large cities alike. The copper alloy used for these coins, a mixture of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, gave the coins their familiar reddish hue, though with circulation over the decades many of these cents would darken to a rich brown or even blacken patina, depending on storage conditions and handling. Beyond their metallurgical composition, the 1939 wheat pennies carry stories in their wear, marks, and luster. A freshly minted, uncirculated cent from that year displays radiant cartwheel shine, with sharp details in Lincoln's hair and the wheat stalks crisply defined. But coins that pass through the hands of countless Americans often reveal nicks, scratches, and smoothing that testify to their long journey in commerce. When we examine the 1939 wheat penny, as collectors and historians, we see more than a small denomination coin. We see a symbol of American resilience during an era of change. To fully appreciate it, one must dive into the mintages, the varieties, the errors, and the collecting culture that surrounds it. Some 1939 pennies show double die obverses or subtle repunched mint marks, errors that went unnoticed by the general public but later became treasures for collectors. These varieties remind us of the human element behind the minting process. For though machines struck the coins, human oversight and mechanical quirks left behind tiny mysteries for future generations to discover. Collectors often categorize the 1939 wheat penny by condition and grade from good to fine to mint state, and even brilliant uncirculated coins grading reveals the true value of these cents, with common circulated examples being worth only a few cents over face value, while pristine high-grade examples can fetch hundreds and, in rare cases, thousands at auction, particularly if they exhibit unique varieties or exceptional eye appeal. Yet the true value of the 1939 wheat penny is not only in dollars, but in history. It tells us how Americans lived, what they carried in their pockets, and how even the smallest coin could play a role in shaping commerce, culture, and memory. Each penny could have purchased a stick of gum or gone toward a movie ticket where audiences watched classics like Gone with the Wind or The Wizard of Oz, which had just captured the imagination of the nation in 1939. Each penny might have been dropped into a savings jar by a family struggling to get by, or slipped into a church collection plate as an offering of faith. These coins circulated through small-town general stores and bustling city markets. They were clinked together in the cash registers of diners that served steaming coffee to traveling salesmen, and they passed from hand to hand on busy factory floors where workers built the machinery that would soon contribute to the war effort. If we follow the life of a single 1939 wheat penny, we can trace the path of ordinary Americans through the extraordinary events of the 20th century. A child might have found one in his allowance, a young woman might have used one to buy a stamp to send a letter across the country, a soldier might have carried one in his pocket as a token of home when shipped overseas. Each coin is a time capsule, a tangible link to the past, preserved in copper for future generations to study and cherish. The artistry of Brenner's design continued to resonate in 1939. His initials VD, which had been controversially removed from the reverse in 1909, were later restored to the obverse in 1918 and remain there to this day. These three small letters are a reminder that behind every coin lies an artist, a craftsman whose vision shapes the nation's currency. The 1939 wheat penny is therefore not only a financial tool, but also a miniature work of art, one that combines symbolism, history, and utility in perfect harmony. In telling the story of this coin, we are telling the story of America itself, from the struggles of the Depression to the looming specter of global conflict, from the hopes of ordinary citizens to the enduring legacy of Lincoln. As the two wheat stalks frame the word 1 cent, we are reminded of the agricultural foundation of the nation and of the countless farmers who fed the country through hard times. As Lincoln's steady gaze faces rightward, we are reminded of leadership, integrity, and unity, qualities that America needed more than ever in 1939. To create a 2-hour narrative about the 1939 wheat penny, we can expand further into the history of the Lincoln Cent series, the life of Victor David Brenner, the minting process at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the role of coinage in Depression-era America, the international events shaping the world in 1939, and the collecting culture that has grown around these cents today. Every detail, from alloy composition to die varieties, from circulation patterns to auction records, can be woven into a sweeping tale that transforms a humble penny into a grand symbol of American endurance. The 1939 wheat penny may be small in size, but it is vast in meaning. It carries with it the story of a nation at a pivotal moment, and by holding one in your hand, you hold a piece of history, a reminder of where we have come from, and a testament to the enduring power of even the smallest objects to tell the largest stories. The year 1944 marked a pivotal moment in both world history and in the story of American coinage. And at the center of this period lies the fascinating 1944 Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that has captured the attention of collectors, historians, and everyday people who stumble across it in their change. This small copper coin tells a story far bigger than its size. It connects us to the tail end of World War II, to the resilience of the United States Mint, and to the remarkable changes in materials, minting practices and economic pressures that shaped the coins in circulation at that time. To understand the significance of the 1944 wheat penny, we must step back to the early years of the Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. This coin was revolutionary, as it marked the first time a United States coin featured a real historical figure instead of classical imagery. The design, by Victor David Brenner, placed Lincoln's portrait proudly on the obverse, while the reverse displayed two simple stalks of wheat curving around the words 1 cent and United States of America. This wheat design would endure until 1958, becoming one of the most iconic motifs in American numismatics. By the time the United States entered the Second World War in December 1941, the Lincoln cent had already become deeply familiar to Americans, but war brought new challenges to coin production. The US Mint faced severe shortages in critical metals, including copper, which was essential for producing ammunition shell casings and electrical wiring to support the war effort. By 1943, the government ordered the mint to preserve copper for military use, leading to the creation of the famous 1943 steel cent struck on zinc-coated steel planchets. These coins were lighter, magnetic, and unlike anything the American public had ever handled. Though practical, they quickly proved unpopular as they rusted easily and were often mistaken for dimes. When 1944 arrived, the war was still raging, but copper supplies had stabilized somewhat, and the mint returned to producing cents in copper. Yet even this transition came with an intriguing twist. Instead of sourcing newly mined copper, the mint repurposed spent ammunition shell casings collected from military training grounds and battlefields across the country and overseas, melted down and rolled into sheets. This recycled metal became the raw material for the 1944 wheat cents, making them not only coins of commerce, but also silent witnesses to the recycling spirit and sacrifices of a nation at war. Each 1944 penny carries within it the remnants of wartime America, forged literally out of the debris of conflict. The 1944 wheat penny was struck at 3 mint facilities: the Philadelphia Mint with no mint mark, the Denver Mint with a small d mark below the date, and the San Francisco Mint with an S mark. Together these mints produced an astonishingly high mintage, over 1 billion coins in total, making 1944 one of the most common years in the wheat cent series. The Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 1.4 billion coins, a record at the time, and a clear reflection of the enormous demand for small change in a booming wartime economy, as millions of soldiers were paid in cash, and as workers filled factories producing goods for the war effort. But despite these high mintages, the 1944 cent remains fascinating to collectors because of its varieties, errors, and the unique circumstances of its creation. One of the most sought-after rarities is the 1944 steel cent, a mistake that occurred when leftover steel planchets from 1943 were accidentally fed into the presses in 1944. These transitional error coins are incredibly scarce, with only a handful known to exist today, and they sell for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction. Conversely, a few 1943 copper cents exist when copper planchets intended for 1942 were accidentally used a year later. Both the 1943 copper cent and the 1944 steel cent are legendary rarities, considered among the holy grails of American numismatics. The standard 1944 copper wheat penny weighs 3.11 grams, is composed of 95% copper with a small balance of tin and zinc, and has a diameter of 19 millimeters. Its obverse features Abraham Lincoln with the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date, while the reverse displays the iconic wheat ears design flanking the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E Pluribus Unum at the top. The artistry of Brenner's design, combined with the wartime story behind the metal, gives this coin a presence far greater than its face value. When collectors evaluate the 1944 wheat penny, condition is everything. Coins that circulated heavily during the 1940s and 1952 often show considerable wear, with smooth surfaces, flattened wheat stalks, and faded lettering. These examples are common and can be found in coin shops or online for just a few cents above face value. However, high-grade specimens, especially those preserved in uncirculated condition or with brilliant red luster, are far scarcer and command strong premiums. Coins graded mint state 65 or higher with full red surfaces untouched by oxidation can sell for hundreds of dollars, and the most pristine examples certified at the top levels have reached thousands. The 1944D and 1944 South Mint marks add further layers of collectability. The Denver Mint struck over 430 million coins, while San Francisco struck over 282 million. Though both are plentiful in circulated grades, uncirculated survivors with sharp strikes and blazing color are avidly pursued. The S mint mark especially tends to be weaker, and collectors value strong clear examples. Certain error varieties add spice to the hunt, including doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and off-center strikes, all of which provide a glimpse into the hurried wartime production environment. The broader historical context also makes the 1944 penny compelling. In that year, the Allied forces launched the D-Day invasion, liberating France and pushing towards victory in Europe. At the same time, the Pacific theater saw intense battles in places like the Philippines. The war was demanding and costly, and every citizen was asked to contribute, from rationing goods to recycling scrap metal. Even children collected tin cans and copper wiring for the war effort, knowing that those materials might end up in the very coins they carried in their pockets. Thus, the 1944 wheat penny is more than just a numismatic object. It is a tangible artifact of sacrifice, resilience, and victory after the war ended. In 1945, the United States would undergo enormous economic growth, and the Lincoln wheat penny would remain a familiar companion in people's pockets until the design was retired in 1958, replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse. Yet the 1940% endures as one of the most symbolic issues in the series, beloved not only for its connection to history, but also for its place in everyday life. Millions of people born during or just after the war remember handling these coins as children, buying candy, newspapers, or bus fare. They are woven into the cultural fabric of mid-20th century America today. When someone stumbles upon a 1944 wheat penny, it may seem like just an old coin, but to those who know its story, it is a bridge to a time of global struggle, national unity, and the enduring values symbolized by the image of Abraham Lincoln himself. In the world of American coinage, few coins captured the imagination of collectors, historians, and everyday people like the humble wheat penny. And when we turn our attention to the year 1954, we uncover a fascinating chapter of numismatic history that stretches far beyond the copper coin itself. The 1954 wheat penny represents a post-war America, a society transitioning from the challenges of World War II into the prosperity of the 1950s. And every detail of this coin, from its design to its circulation to the stories it carried in pockets, purses, and cash registers, tells us something about that era. When we speak about the 1954 wheat penny, we are not just talking about a small copper coin struck at the United States Mint. We are looking into a time capsule that holds within it the economic conditions, the artistic ideals, the minting technology, and the spirit of a nation finding its place on the world stage. In the mid-20th century, the obverse of the wheat penny, of course, bears the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, first appearing in 1909 to celebrate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. This design remained unchanged for decades, becoming one of the most enduring and iconic images on American coinage. Brenner's initials, which had been controversial upon the coin's release, had returned to the design in 1918, appearing at the base of Lincoln's shoulder, and by 1954, this portrait had become almost sacred, a reminder of Lincoln's role in preserving the Union and ending slavery to millions of Americans. The reverse of the coin retained its classic wheat ears design, symbolizing agricultural abundance and national strength. By 1954, the wheat reverse had already been in use for 45 years and was nearing the end of its run, before being replaced in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial Reverse to mark Lincoln's 150th birthday. This gives the 1954 wheat penny an additional layer of historical importance as it belongs to the final decade of the wheat cent series and serves as one of the last links to Brenner's original vision. The production of the 1954 wheat penny took place at 3 facilities: the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint, each contributing to the total mintage of that year. Philadelphia produced the bulk of the coins with no mint mark, as was customary. Denver struck coins marked with a small d beneath the date, and San Francisco contributed its own mint mark issues, although in reduced numbers compared to earlier years. This tri-mint production gives collectors a variety of 1954 wheat pennies to study and pursue, each with its own scarcity profile and strike quality. The economic climate of 1954 adds another layer of context. The United States was experiencing a period of post-war growth. Suburbanization was spreading across the country. Car ownership was becoming more common. Television sets were transforming living rooms, and the economy was expanding. Yet inflation, concerns and debates about monetary policy still touched ordinary citizens in their daily lives. A penny in 1954 carried more purchasing power than it does today. A single cent could buy a stick of gum or contribute meaningfully toward a child's allowance, making the wheat penny an active participant in the daily economy. The minting process itself was a blend of artistry and industrial power. The planchets were prepared from copper alloy, which by 1954 had stabilized at 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Following the temporary wartime change to steel cents in 1943, the presses struck millions upon millions of these coins, each one carrying the proud image of Lincoln into the hands of the American public. Quality control, however, was not perfect, and this has given us fascinating error coins and varieties from 1954. Off-center strikes, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and die cracks have all been documented, and these minting anomalies transform what was once a routine cent into a collectible treasure. Some of these varieties can command significant premiums in the numismatic market, especially those with strong doubling on the date or mint mark. Collectors have long prized the 1954 wheat penny in particular. Since San Francisco mintages were relatively modest by the mid-1950s, the San Francisco Mint was nearing the end of its role in striking cents, halting cent production entirely after 1955. This makes the 1954 not only a collectible coin in its own right, but also a historical artifact of a minting era that was about to close. Enthusiasts of the Lincoln cent often note that coins from San Francisco carry a unique charm, perhaps due to their lower mintages and the way they circulated less widely across the country compared to the Philadelphia and Denver issues. When we study the 1954 wheat penny, we also uncover personal stories. This was a coin that might have jingled in the pocket of a factory worker in Detroit or been dropped into the till of a soda fountain in New York. It may have been saved by a child starting a coin collection inspired by the booming interest in hobbyist coin collecting during the 1950s. Fueled by coin boards and numismatic magazines. Every 1954 penny could have been part of someone's daily life, each one a witness to the culture and commerce of its time. Beyond the minting numbers and design details, the 1954 wheat penny also reflects broader themes in American history. The Cold War was intensifying in the mid-1950s. The United States was asserting itself globally, while domestically it was grappling with issues of civil rights, prosperity, and cultural change. And through it all, the Lincoln cent quietly circulated as both money and symbol representing stability in a time of transition. Collectors today who seek out the 1954 wheat penny are not just chasing a piece of copper, they are reaching back into history, trying to hold in their hands the essence of mid-century America. Some pursue high-grade examples certified by professional grading services, where the details of Lincoln's hair and the wheat stalks remain crisp. Others chase rare error varieties or simply enjoy building complete date and mint mark sets. Each 1954 penny, whether brilliant, uncirculated, or heavily worn, carries its own journey and story that makes it unique. When we dive deep into the 1954 wheat penny, we open doors into art history, economics, minting technology, cultural values, and even personal nostalgia. This coin has the power to teach us about the United States Mint, the decisions of engravers and treasury officials, and the way everyday money reflects national identity. For a numismatist or historian, a coin, the 1954 wheat penny, is not just an object. It is a portal to a world of meaning. And the more we look, the more we discover. And so, the story of the 1954 wheat penny is not only the story of a coin, but the story of a nation in motion, standing at the crossroads of tradition and change. And it is this depth, this richness, and this connection to both the past and present that ensures the wheat penny of 1954 will always command fascination among collectors, historians, and all who value the history written in metal and memory.